now, even if you're not monetized. So YouTube, for that simplicity's sake, let's not do any music tonight. But I'll tell you what, I've got Ron Calzone on the phone with me right now. And Ron's going to give us some information that's going on right now having to do with information pertaining to SAPA with the Eighth Circuit Court. And not only that, information about SB3 possibly, and also about redistricting. So Ron Calzone, who should need no introduction, is often referred to as the architect of SAPA, the Second Amendment Preservation Act, which was a vision of his going back earlier than 2013. In January of 2013, SAPA first saw the light of day in the Missouri legislature. No other state had seen anything like it before. And we finally got it done in 2021, but of course it was overturned by the Eighth Circuit, which has become a little bit of a judiciary circus. But Ron's here to fill us in on some new information that pertains to the state of Illinois with the Eighth Circuit, and let us know how that may affect SAPA going forward in the state of Missouri. So, Ron, welcome to the show. Thank you for being with us.
Good evening, Patrick. Thank you for having me.
You bet.
Well, the Second Amendment Preservation Act and its path through the federal courts has been kind of an interesting endeavor. If you remember, when it was first in court, a guy named John Sauer was the Missouri Solicitor General. And that was between the Trump administrations. And John Sauer actually was defending SAPA in court. He was, one of our better advocates for it. And between 2021, when it first was challenged, and now, of course, Trump took the presidency. And remember, it was the Federal Department of DOD. I'm drawing a blank here, Patrick.
Okay.
Not the DOD.
The Attorney General, DOJ.
Yeah, it's the Federal Attorney General, Department of Justice, DOJ. The DOJ was the one that actually challenged SAPA. And then with the Trump administration, of course, you got a new DOJ and a new Solicitor General. Well, it just so happens that Trump tapped John Sauer, Missouri's former Solicitor General. The Solicitor General is really the guy that does all the work in the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General is typically more of a political figure, and they are the face that you see, but the real grunt work and a lot of the policy work is done by the Solicitor General. So that all sounds pretty good, right? You've got the Biden administration, DOJ challenged SAPA, but then it was replaced with the Trump DOJ, and Trump picks the very guy that was defending SAPA while he worked in Missouri, defending it against the Biden DOJ. So kind of in the catbird seat, right? You would think that by the time it all flushes out, we would have a friend in the federal DOJ. And maybe we do. I don't know. But the bottom line is that as it worked its way through the DOJ, John Sauer recused himself. Now, our Attorney General told me, personally himself, that he thought that although John Sauer was recused, he would still have a lot of influence on the way the DOJ handled this case. Okay, so put all of that in your hip pocket. After the Eighth Circuit ruled against SAPA, the next step for the Missouri Attorney General was to ask the Supreme Court to take cert, or certiorari. And so that basically is just the Supreme Court reviewing and potentially reversing what the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals said about SAPA in that case. Andrew Bailey, the Attorney General for Missouri, I think quite wisely, decided to ask for an extension on the time frame to apply for that cert in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. And he got a 30-day extension, and that 30-day extension happened to coincide with about January 22nd or so. Now, who knows what happened about January 22nd in 2025? course, Trump took office about then. What was it, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
But bottom line is that the application for cert before the U.S. Supreme Court coincided now with the Trump administration taking over the DOJ. So the hope was that we would have a friendlier DOJ, somebody that would be more likely to support SAPA, and maybe even just simply say, we have a different opinion than the Biden DOJ did. We think that SAPA is just fine, and we think the Supreme Court should take up the case and not only take it up and review it, but reverse what the Eighth Circuit said. So the application was made in January 22nd, 23rd, somewhere in there. And 30 days later, the Trump DOJ had an opportunity to answer that application. And that's when they would say, we agree with Missouri, we disagree with Missouri, you should, the U.S. Supreme Court should review it or they shouldn't review it. 30 days comes and goes, and they ask for another extension. And then another 30 days, and they ask for another extension. And finally, they asked for an extension that places the due date for their reply to the Missouri's application to go before the Supreme Court for May 30th. Now, May 30th is the day that the Missouri General Assembly is finally done for the year, unless there's a special session called. And then they finally issued their reply to Missouri's application for cert. So what we had been hoping was that they were going to wait to see what the Missouri General Assembly did. Did they try to make changes to make the Eighth Circuit happy? Or did they just leave it alone or whatever it was? But they wanted to wait until the General Assembly had an opportunity and either did or did not change SAPA. Well, the General Assembly fortunately didn't change SAPA, as you may have been following. I was opposed to what they were trying to do, and we can talk about that in a minute. But ultimately what they did is they said they don't think that the Supreme Court should take up the case. And they did change the position of the Biden DOJ, but maybe even for the worse. And this is why I say that. Okay, now this can all get very complicated. Of course, Donald Trump plays 5D chess, right?
Right.
Yeah. So the whole world is more complicated with Donald Trump as president. So one of his signature issues, of course, is dealing with immigration. And a lot of states and some cities, not a lot of states, some states and some cities have made themselves sanctuary cities or sanctuary states with respect to not the Second Amendment, but to immigration issues. They are essentially applying the anti-commandeering doctrine just like we did with SAPA.
And that applies
Just
to states that legalize marijuana too. Is that correct, Ron?
That's exactly right. That's about what I was about to say in my next breath. So the left, of course, I'm in favor of decriminalizing marijuana. I don't think that you ought to lock people up for smoking the plant. I think it's kind of a dumb thing to do. I don't do it. Never would. Never have. But I don't think it should be against the law. But just the same, it's typically the left states that make themselves, marijuana sanctuaries or immigration sanctuaries. And they apply to the anti-commandeering doctrine. They might not call it that, but they're doing essentially the same thing. They're saying, we're not going to cooperate with ICE. We are not going to allow any expenditures of government resources helping ICE do their job. And of course, the same thing with respect to marijuana. So I don't know how the Trump administration feels about marijuana, but they want to get rid of everybody that's not here legally. They can, and that's a whole nother discussion, I guess. But the bottom line is that the anti-commandeering doctrine is so effective, and that is because the feds need state help to do whatever they do, that they feel like they need to try to get around this anti-commandeering doctrine as it's applied to immigration. So that ends up putting the immigration issue at odds with the Second Amendment issue. What's good for the Second Amendment is harmful to the effort to try to enforce immigration laws. Now, courts have already said that Trump cannot circumvent the California, in particular, California's stand that they're not going to participate with ICE. So the federal courts have said California is within their right to do it. That's consistent with all of the other anti-commandeering measures. But that's not going to make Trump happy. They're still trying to sue, and they're still trying to get any place that's got these immigration sanctuary cities to abandon that policy. Okay, so now this is what really gets interesting, Patrick. They had said as kind of a tertiary, a lesser important argument against SAPA, that we are discriminating against the federal government, that is Missouri, is discriminating against the federal government and former federal employees when we say we're not going to allow you to be hired in the state of Missouri if you formerly worked for the feds enforcing federal gun control laws. So they're saying that when we say we'll hire Tom and we'll hire Dick, but we won't hire Harry because Harry, what we believe was unconstitutionally enforced federal gun laws, they say, the Trump DOJ says, that's discrimination, and you can't discriminate against us. Well, the thing that's an interesting revelation is just a few weeks ago, they started using that same argument with respect to the immigration sanctuary places. And so they're saying that California is discriminating against the federal government and federal employees by not helping them or helping ICE, basically. So they're in this position where if they say that the state of Missouri does have the authority to apply anti-commandeering, they do have the authority to say we're not going to hire former federal gun control enforcers. That puts them in a bad position to fight the immigration issue.
Okay.
So I'm gonna take a breath there, and Patrick, and let you opine on that.
So what you're saying basically is there's now a double standard in court opinion on basically the same thing, which is, of course, anti-commandeering doctrine. So the liberal courts are saying, yes, you can use anti-commandeering doctrine to allow illegal immigration to flourish in your cities, but you absolutely cannot use anti-commandeering doctrine to prevent the federal government from enforcing from your own law enforcement in your own state enforcing federal gun laws or helping the feds come in and enforce federal gun laws. So,
well, that's not exactly right.
Okay.
But that is what, no, let me rephrase that. I didn't quite get it out. So let me rephrase my thought before it gets through my lips. Understand that the Eighth Circuit actually expressed in the SAPA case that Missouri does have the right to apply anti-commandeering. They didn't call it that, but they said we can withhold resources. They said that everything in SAPA was just fine except for the fact that we said we think federal gun control laws are unconstitutional. So, we went into the legislative session thinking that all we had to do was say, take away our declaration that federal gun control was unconstitutional, which is not a portion of the bill that has any teeth. It doesn't do anything.
It was part of the preamble, right? It wasn't part of the actual law, was it?
Yeah, more or less that's right.
Okay.
And, so it wasn't, that statement's not necessary for SAPA to be effective. So we could have changed it around, reworded it a little bit, just taken just that part out, and that would have satisfied the Eighth Circuit opinion. But the Trump administration not only said we don't think the Supreme Court should take this up, they said it should be sent back to the Eighth Circuit, and basically they're saying that they want the Eighth Circuit to also declare that we are discriminating against discriminating against federal employees in the federal government if we refused to hire an individual who had enforced federal gun laws.
So discrimination, basically, they were saying.
They're saying that would be discrimination. That's right.
Okay.
So now, why is that important? Yeah, the reason it's important is between 2013 and 2014, when we passed SAPA in 2013, the Democrat governor vetoed it. We came back in 2014 to try again, and the thing we learned in between was the fact that you've got state cops being deputized by federal agencies, whether it's the DEA or the ATF or any of the alphabet organizations. They are deputizing Missouri cops. And so technically, while they're working on one of these task forces, like a drug interdiction task force or an ATF task force, they're not Missouri employees. They're employees of the federal government. And we can't, in the state of Missouri, can't tell those federal employees what they can and they can't do. And we can't hold them responsible for what they do as a federal employee. Mm-hmm. So, we figured that out in the summer of 2013, I think it was. And so we had to come up with a way to prevent, your local police force, your local chief of police, or maybe even your local sheriff, from getting around SAPA by farming out his deputies or his cops to a federal agency and let them be deputized. So what without the teeth that we put in, which I'll describe in just a minute, without the teeth we put in it, that would be a huge, huge loophole. And they could, by day be a Missouri cop and by night be a federal cop, or on every other day they could be a Missouri cop and every other day be a federal cop and violate SAPA while they're a federal cop and then come back to their regular job as a Missouri cop.
Mm-hmm.
And, so that would totally gut the effectiveness of SAPA. So what we did with SAPA is we said, if while SAPA was in effect, you worked for the federal government in any capacity enforcing federal gun control laws, then you can't come back and work for the state of Missouri.
Wow.
And so that provides lots of disincentive for, that what I consider to be mischief, that is just temporarily loaning out your cops to the feds.
Yep.
So now they want to come back. The Trump DOJ wants to come back and say you can't do that. And so that effectively takes all the teeth out of SAPA.
Yep.
Is that as complicated as it sounds to me?
It is kind of complicated, actually. Way too complicated. And actually, it sounds to me like the spirit of the anti-commandeering doctrine is being a bit abused here, is what it sounds like.
Well, it's worse than that. It's being gutted.
Yeah.
It's just, and so you may remember, I'm sure some of you noticed that I was fighting against the so-called SAPA fix in the legislature this year. And the reason I was fighting against it is multifaceted. Number one, we needed to wait until all of this came down. We needed to find out exactly how the DOJ was going to answer our application for cert. And we needed to see what the Supreme Court's going to do, and we just did not have enough information to actually affect the fix. In fact, we're still kind of hoping the Supreme Court will take this up and we won't need to fix anything. But in the end, some people pushed the so-called SAPA fix, and in the process, the bill that they were pushing gutted SAPA in ways that are even different than what I just described. So it was the wrong thing to do. It was too early to try to fix it. Too early to try to fix SAPA. And when they tried, they did it all wrong.
Yep. That's what it sounds like. So going forward right now, we really don't even know how to go forward at this point, do we? I mean, has the Supreme Court agreed to look at this now?
No, they haven't decided one way or the other.
Okay. Gotcha. And that's kind of what we need right now, isn't it? Isn't that kind of the missing link here, is just finding out whether the Supreme Court is actually going to have an opinion on SAPA? They're going to have hearings on it and have a decision on it?
Yes.
So
So to underscore the foolishness of trying to do a SAPA fix in 2025, it's like it's like going hunting and not even knowing what the game is.
Yeah.
So you don't know whether you're going duck hunting or you're going dove hunting or deer hunting or turkey hunting. You don't even know what kind of gun to take.
Mm-hmm. Understood. And so keeping that in mind, basically, I imagine people will probably still try to do SAPA legislation in 2026 anyway. But I think it's very important to make sure that the legislature is educated on this and understands what's going on. So are there attempts being made at this point to let some key people know legislatively?
Well, I'm not making any such attempts. I think part of the problem we've got is the majority floor leader is a guy named Tony Luetkemeyer.
Mm-hmm.
And Tony Luetkemeyer is, a pretty moderate Republican at best. He's very tied to law enforcement, very greatly influenced by law enforcement. And I don't think he's going to let anything through the Senate that does the job properly. And like, as you know, Patrick, between 2014 and 2021, we kind of had to wait till some senators termed out
before
we could do anything with SAPA.
Yep.
And I think that might be the case with him. We might have to get rid of him.
Gotcha.
I say get rid of him, wait till he's gone for whatever reason.
Yep, understood.
But,
okay, well, and of course, if he is the floor leader of the Senate, that means he's most likely going to become the speaker in 2027, right?
Or the pro tem.
Or pro tem, I mean, yeah.
I think he's termed out. Let me just double check that. But I think maybe he's just got this next year
okay
ahead of him. There was talk for a while about him being appointed to some kind of a federal job, like a federal prosecutor or even a federal judgeship. And either that hasn't happened yet, or it's just not going to happen. I'm not sure. So I'm going to look him up real quick. This is Tony Luetkemeyer, first elected to the Senate in 2018.
Okay, gotcha.
So he'll be done after 2026.
Yep. Okay. Well, that answers that question then.
So that's good news.
Yep.
So really, I mean, to me, I think the marching order for all of us is don't let anything happen in the General Assembly in 2026. And, particularly if we don't know what the Supreme Court's going to do yet. And also, unless we have a plan to get around the floor leader, Tony Luetkemeyer. One of the things that, if you've been around the Capitol at all, you understand is, especially when you're dealing with the Senate and something that's going to be the subject of a filibuster, things happen at 2:30 a.m. quicker than you can react to.
Yep. And
you end up with bad stuff happening in the dead of night, and you can't fix it.
Yep, and we've seen that before with IP reform, SB 727, things of that nature. The homeschooling bill or whatever they wanted to call it. I can't remember the phrase they used for it, but
there's the big education bill, subsidies for education.
Yep, and then going to 3 o'clock in the morning. And, with that kind of stuff, amendment after amendment after amendment, confusing everybody. No one has time to read it. They're forcing a vote. Oh, yeah. We've seen this happen a lot. This happens in D.C. It happens in Missouri as well. But I think you're right. I think, basically it's time for us to sit back and let the Supreme Court weigh in on what SAPA is and how it works. And then, because I don't know, I think what we got done in 2021 in the state of Missouri with the Second Amendment Preservation Act is something that a lot of us are very proud of. a lot of us agree with. And and of course, it was a activist court, activist judges that went ahead and overturned it. And, basically, I understand the impetus here with, let's try and fix this legislatively so we can get it back as quickly as possible. But I don't know, maybe parts of SAPA are still enforced. Basically, we have Supreme Court justices that had no problem with the fines. So would you say that at least that part of SAPA is still kind of enforceable at this point?
Well, there are two Supreme Court judges that say that the private cause of action portion of SAPA cannot be enjoined by a federal judge. And so Gorsuch and Alito said that basically SAPA was still in effect.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that might be kind of an expensive endeavor to prove that. So you have to find somebody that's violated SAPA, then sue them, and it might be kind of a big headache to do.
Yeah.
And so I would be inclined to let things play their course.
Okay.
And we'll see what happens. But again, one of the problems with the attempt to fix SAPA in 2025 was the way the bill was drafted initially. And it was basically, I'm not going to mention any names, but a gun rights organization was trying to push SAPA in other states, and they basically just used the language that they were taking to other states. It had some major flaws in it that nobody had caught, and it had actually, I'm not sure that version did, but in the Senate, a loophole got added that Michael Bolden of the 10th Amendment Center said was big enough to drive a train through. So besides what the Trump DOJ wants to do to SAPA, the version that was working its way through the Senate got added another big gutting loophole. So when it's finally the time to do something about it, the bill needs to be constructed in such a way that you cannot do anything that you don't predetermine you're going to do to it. And we got some good precedent from the Missouri Supreme Court about how to do that. You use some language that says that this, in the title of the bill, that this bill is for the sole purpose of this or that.
Mm-hmm.
And the this or that needs to be just fixing what the Eighth Circuit objected to and no more.
Yep, I understand.
And that's not how the bill was drafted. And so that let them do all kinds of mischief with it. And, I'm telling you, the people that were fighting the hardest against SAPA back in 2021 were just fine with the version that was moving through the Senate.
Ah, gotcha. All right. Well, you know what? An easy victory like that, basically with watered down legislation doesn't feel real good. It just doesn't. And the victory of getting SAPA through the legislature in 2021 was bittersweet as well, because and once again, this is my point of view, Ron. This is not something I'm speaking of as fact, but it felt to me like SAPA was being, held hostage to get the gas tax through and PDMP through, which is the prescription drug Medicaid or reporting program. And it felt like, it's like we have to get all these other causes through, and then we'll let you have SAPA. Would you feel it felt that way to you as well?
Well, it feels like that every session to some extent.
Yeah.
You've got people that are, generally our friends and conservative guys that are making deals, and sometimes those are deals with the devil.
Yep. Okay.
And I don't think we needed to.
No.
We had enough momentum. We had a huge snowball rolling down the hill, and it was going to squish anybody that got in its way.
Yep.
And even now, every Republican wants to be able to say, I voted for SAPA.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is that they don't care what SAPA is. They just want to be able to say, I voted for SAPA.
Yep. Okay. So that's a wonderful report on SAPA, because, basically that means, and I agree with you, Ron, knowing what I know now, we do have to wait on the Supreme Court to weigh in on this. Anything else just it seems like it's a waste of time. And we did have, some, as you had mentioned before, issues with the bills that were moving through the legislature in 2025, the SAPA fix, as we called it. And so, I don't know, rather than repeat that, I think maybe we can cool our heels here and just wait on the Supreme Court to weigh in on this, because chances are it'll be next year, hopefully. And so, go ahead.
The odds have always been greater that they would say, no, we're not going to take it up. It's always a long shot getting in front of the Supreme Court, but it's such a huge thing that you've got to let it play out.
Yep.
If you do get in front of the Supreme Court and you win, there's nothing bigger than that. And if you get in front of the Supreme Court and you lose, you have a really good roadmap about,
yep,
that will help you know how to actually fix it.
Yep, how to write the new version of SAPA, so that the Supreme Court will agree with it, and that means the lower courts will have to agree with it because they know the Supreme Courts agree with it. So it's actually kind of simple.
And if this bill had passed, the SAPA fix bill had passed, it would not have addressed what the Trump DOJ now is saying their new big problem is with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would have been right back in court. We would have been still dealing with the same problem. And actually, we probably wouldn't have, come to think of it, because the version gutted SAPA. The version they were trying to fix, the fix for SAPA, was going to make it ineffectual anyway. So maybe the Trump DOJ wouldn't have cared about it.
Yep. Well, it probably wouldn't have gone to the courts in the first place. So the DOJ wouldn't get involved at that point. Interesting.
Well, as we've observed, the other states passed what they called SAPA.
Yep.
But the DOJ didn't challenge them because
That's right.
they didn't have teeth.
That's right. You're absolutely right. We often refer to that as the Montana bill. Many states have what we call the Montana bill, which had SAPA, the spirit of SAPA, but there was absolutely no enforcement mechanism included in that bill. It just wasn't there. There was no fine for breaking the law. It says it's against the law to infringe on the Second Amendment rights of citizens, basically pertaining to federal enforcement, federal laws and federal enforcement. However, there was absolutely no ramifications for breaking that law, for the state to break their own law. So you're right. You meant that with the toothless, if you will. Basically no power behind it. A feel-good bill, is what we often call in the initiative. So
and that's basically where we would have ended up with had the SAPA fix passed this last spring.
Yep. So, all right. Well, now we got the goods on SAPA now. We know what's going on there. So it's two other subjects we'd like to cover with you real quick. Let's start with SB 3. And let us know what you know about that and what's going on with that.
Well, okay, give me just 1 second.
Sure.
I've got to feed the integracs,
Okay, gotcha. And then when that's done, too, we're going to ask you about what's looking like they're going to start working on concurrent majority or IP reform, possibly in a extraordinary session situation or environment, a venue, if you will. Or even I've heard a little bit that people were looking at trying to do that during a veto session. And so these are... Go ahead.
Yeah, we're back to the Trump administration. They want Missouri and some other red states to redistrict.
Mm-hmm.
He wants more Republican congressmen to help bolster his tenure in the White House.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's because the Republicans up there are doing such a good job. Not.
Yeah, I know. I knew that was slightly sarcastic. Actually, I could hear it.
Just slightly. Okay, so on Senate Bill 3, which we're talking about Senate Bill 3 that was passed during the extraordinary or special session a few weeks ago, and most people know it as the Stadium Bill, the
Mm-hmm.
Kansas City Sports Franchise Stadium Bill, and or subsidies for billionaires. But there's much more in it than that in the bill. So the bill ended up being multi-subject and multifaceted. And of course, the news of the week is that we filed, that is, the Article 3 Institute is funding a lawsuit that challenges Senate Bill 3. And we just filed that lawsuit this week.
Mm-hmm.
And so Senator Mike Moon, somebody that you all are familiar with,
Mm-hmm.
is the lead plaintiff. So the case is styled Moon versus the state of Missouri.
Okay.
And Bryant Wolfen is a representative, a new representative. If you don't know him, you need to get to know him. He's a great guy. He's a plaintiff, and then I'm the third plaintiff. And so it's not about the stadium subsidies. The lawsuit is about the fact that this is a multi-subject bill in violation of the Constitution. It's a change purpose bill. It includes special laws, and it includes subsidies, whoever the subsidies are to. It's not just because it's the subsidies for billionaires, but it's got tax credit type subsidies
Mm-hmm.
that are also violating the Missouri Constitution. And so that's what the Article 3 Institute is about. We call it A3I. It doesn't matter whether we like the bill or we hate the bill. If it was passed using unconstitutional procedures, or in other words, if the legislature overstepped their constitutional authority, then that's subject to a lawsuit brought by the Article 3 Institute. And so we challenged it this week. There are several grounds on which we challenged it. One of them has to do with something that's maybe not such a bad idea. So part of the bill was the opportunity for some counties, but not all of them, to vote on whether or not they want to freeze their property tax or limit it to a 5% increase per year.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is they didn't apply that equally to all of the counties.
Yep.
So, for instance, I'm in Senator Justin Brown's district. He was preoccupied doing something. There's speculation about what he was doing. I won't repeat. But when they were negotiating which counties were going to be included and not, he wasn't there. So my county doesn't get the benefit of these property tax freezes. And that's true of quite a few counties around the country, around the state. So that's not legal. You can't create these crazy definitions of which counties included and which counties not, and have no rational reason for doing that, and the bill be constitutional.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the problems with the bill. Another big problem, and so what's going to happen with that, by the way, Patrick, is I think that's the low-hanging fruit. I think that we kill that bill based on that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the General Assembly is going to have to come back and do property tax reform the right way.
Yep.
And most counties were limited to a 5% increase every year.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that instead of getting a 20% increase right away, you get it over 5 years, or go over 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Which is still too much.
Yep.
A 5% increase is too much. So we should all be 0% counties.
Yeah. And so, yeah, we're cooking on something here with the initiative to try and get a joint resolution going to actually start getting rid of that addiction and putting it off and by the way, when asked about that, people are saying you can't just, defund the schools. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about shifting the money off of property into other places. And so that's something that we're working on as well. However, we're having problems getting numbers, serious problems getting numbers. And it's almost getting to the point, Ron, where I'm starting to think we'll have to get people to start calling every single school district and find out how much money they collect in property taxes each year, because no one's separating personal property and property tax at the state level. And so they don't know what the number is. That's the incredible thing we're dealing with right now. So in the state of Missouri, they don't separate it out. They don't know what the numbers are. Now, when Retha was still with us, as you know, she was dealing with that problem with the schools. The state didn't even know the proper numbers. Retha was actually auditing the school districts and finding all kinds of problems, making corrections, and even DESE was having to update their website because of problems Retha was finding with how the schools were reporting their data to the state. So we have a problem with, basically, let's just say political subdivisions reporting finances properly to the state authorities. And with property taxes, it's a big chore. Because we have like 550 school districts in the state of Missouri. And so we need personal property and property tax both separated out. And it looks like we'll have to go to all the school districts to do it, unfortunately.
Well, one thing to understand is with Senate Bill 3 in place, there's less incentive for the legislature to do it the right way.
Yep.
They get to say, we check that box.
Yep.
Let's move on.
Yep.
So, if you want real property tax reform, the best thing that can happen is we take Senate Bill 3 out.
Yep.
But to me, though, and not everybody's going to feel this way, but to me, the single biggest issue we have facing us is the fact that the legislature is operating illegally, unconstitutionally, and they do all of the finagling in ways that makes it really hard for citizens to make a difference in what happens in that building.
Yep. Yep. I understand. So that's something we all have to work on too. But thankfully, basically Missouri is a kind of a special place that way. We have a lot of grassroots activity going on here. And when I say that Missouri seems to have a more active grassroots per capita than any other state, it's roughly about 17 states that I have talked to and I talk about the grassroots activity in Missouri, and they say, no, there's nothing like that going on in our capital when I'm talking to legislators in other states. And so, basically, as long as we can kind of coordinate, I know a lot of people are burned out because they really tried hard to get rid of SB 727, the school choice bill, because that was unfair for homeschoolers. And 27 grassroots came together and tried to defeat it, but the legislators said, no, we're not listening. Well, some of them. They had just enough votes to get that through. There was a lot of pressure going on with those legislators up there, and a lot of them decided to vote against their constituents and do what leadership wanted. And so repeats of that basically will discourage people from getting active for shutting down things like SB 3. So, that's one of the issues that we deal with, but I think most states have this problem as well. But it is worth pointing out that, as you say, SB 3 looks like it was unconstitutionally passed. And so,
yeah, absolutely.
So there is cause already. Educating folks on, calling, and I don't know who you would actually, because this is at the court level you're doing this, right?
You mean the Article 3 Institute?
Yes.
Yeah, so the case we filed was in Cole County Circuit Court.
Okay. So my question is, based on that, what can the grassroots do to help that process? Or is there anything they can do at this point? Or is it something that the judge just has to decide in the court?
Well, there could be other entities once we get to the Missouri Supreme Court that could weigh in with the amicus briefs. So that's one way.
Okay.
Generally, let me back up a little bit. This is can I take just a couple minutes and express why I think this is so incredibly important?
Absolutely.
On a highfalutin principle level. So, do you guys ever talk about John Locke?
No, we have not. I'm familiar with John Locke, though.
So, John Locke was a French philosopher. No, I'm sorry. He was a Scottish philosopher from the 1600s, and he wrote the first and second treatise on civil government. So you want to find an audio or a book and read the second treatise on civil government by John Locke. That, next to the Bible, was the writing that most influenced the founding fathers of America. So just Google what documents had the most influence on the founding fathers, and John Locke's going to be right up there in the top 1, 2, or 3. So Thomas Jefferson borrowed almost everything that he put in the Declaration of Independence from John Locke. John Locke was the one that said that people enter into society and they form a collective, a compact, a social compact to protect their liberty. And he called it property. And so your property is not just bricks and mortar and soil and horses and vehicles. Your property includes things like your thought, your religious freedom, your ability to travel. I mean, everything that's important to you is considered your property. That's kind of the libertarian perspective on property.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said that when the government that people create becomes destructive of that primary purpose to protect your rights, your liberty, your property, the people have the right to alter or abolish that government.
Mm-hmm.
What did the Declaration say?
Exactly the same thing.
Exactly the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that is predicated on the fact that our rights are not bestowed by a king. They're not bestowed by an oligarchy. They're not bestowed by virtue of laws or a constitution that's made by some democratic process.
Came from our Creator.
Our rights are bestowed from our Creator.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you have unalienable rights that nobody can take away. A 99.999% vote can't take away certain unalienable rights.
Mm-hmm.
And so those were all the principles that our country was founded on. And yet we recognize that we're willing to give up some of our liberty in order to protect particularly the more important liberties. So we're willing to accept the fact that as you're driving down the road, you should stay in this country on the right side. And when you see one of those red octagon signs, you at least slow down anyway.
Yep.
And you yield to the person coming the other direction that doesn't. And if you don't, and you get in a wreck, then the guy that ran the stop sign is the guy that pays, right?
Yep.
So those are all rules and laws that we're willing to subject ourselves and live under. Give up some of our liberty in order to protect, particularly the more important liberties.
Are you there, Ron?
So I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was getting feedback that was confusing me.
Okay.
Couldn't tell if it was me talking or not, or somebody else. So the basis of this social compact is the idea that we're only going to accept laws that infringe on our liberty, because every law infringes on your liberty to one extent or another. We're only going to accept laws that a majority of our representatives agree on.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't directly vote on everything, but we send people to Jeff City or Washington, D.C., and we're not going to accept this idea that if only 10% or 30% or 40% or even 49.9% vote yes, we're not going to accept that as a new law. It's got to be at least a majority.
Mm-hmm.
So when the Missouri General Assembly rolls a bunch of bills into one, usually it's because most, if not all of those bills, all by themselves would not have gotten a majority vote. And they would have never become law. So what's happening with these multi-subject bills is we're passing laws in violation of the core principles of the compact that our society has with one another. And that is that we only have to obey laws that a majority of us agree on.
Yep.
Now, maybe it's just me, but I get really passionate about that. And I get really offended at the idea that the laws that affect my life and my family's life and liberty are being passed by lawless acts,
Yep.
by people that are acting in lawless ways, and it's not a majority of them that truly agree on any given law because they log roll them all together.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what happened with Senate Bill 727.
Yep.
If you broke it into individual pieces, those individual pieces would not have passed.
Yep, I agree. And there was good in the bill, too. I don't want everyone to think that that was an evil bill, from the pits of hell. There was good stuff in there. But there was bad stuff, too. And so, and compromising like that all the time on these extremely important bills. We're talking about the education of our kids here.
Talking about the indoctrination of our kids.
Yeah, there you go. The indoctrination of our kids going on, and the basically the data collection that will be going on, even for homeschoolers if they choose to take, basically the I don't know what you want to call it, some kind of stipend from the state government, and the whole idea got twisted on what basically it is for the whole thing with what do they call it again, the voucher program, because talk of vouchers started in the 80s. And in the 80s, it was you just get back what you paid in property taxes, for the school. That's all you get back. And then you can apply that to your kid going to a private school or a charter school or what have you, or even homeschooling. And now it's, no, the state's going to set aside $10,000 for every person who applies to get this voucher. But the fine print says you're going to have to do it the government's way. And by the way, you need to report all the data to us as well. And also go through the approved reading lists and stuff which is a problem we've had with. I'm sorry, I need to stop talking. Go ahead, Ron. I get upset.
Well, the thing is, if you believe in free market principles, you also recognize that they were going to give subsidies for some parents
Mm-hmm.
to send their kids to private schools.
That's right.
But the vast majority wouldn't get those subsidies.
That's right.
And what that'll do is the same thing that the federal student loan program did.
Yeah.
It's going to drive up the cost of private schooling.
Yep.
And so the people that were willing to foot the bill themselves as it is won't be able to afford it anymore.
Yep. Yep. So there was
anyway, the bottom line is my whole point in going down that vein was that as long as we let the legislature ignore what the Constitution says about not bait and switching bills, changing the purpose of a bill, and as long as we let them get around the prohibition on multiple subject bills, and as long as we let them pass local and special laws, they're going to win. The bad guys are going to win. The majority that controls, in power is going to be able to run roughshod over the majority.
Yep.
And, so that's why the Article 3 Institute was formed. Because after the almost 3 decades I've spent at the Capitol, I've determined that this is the biggest single problem that we've got in Jefferson City.
Yep. And it seems to be a problem that's unfortunately unsolvable. You'll always have good people like Mike Moon up there. You mentioned Bryant Wolfen. We have good people up in Jeff City, but we just don't have enough good conservatives. We don't expect the Democrats. The Democrats, in fact, and I've talked about this publicly, and I don't name names, but there's a lot of Democrats up in Jeff's. Not a lot. I'm sorry, 2 Democrats that I know of in particular that are actually communists. They're honest to God communists. They believe, communism is the way to go. They're big fans of Karl Marx. So I don't expect them to follow the Constitution, even though they took an oath to it. But the conservatives, you expect a little bit better from, basically. And I know that that's kind of a broad sweeping statement, and it may offend some people, but I go up to Jeff City quite a bit. I talk to these people, and I'm not saying this lightly. There's actually 2 Democrats up there that I'm firmly convinced are actually communists. And so they don't believe in free markets. They don't believe in, a free market education system for the kids. They believe in indoctrination. That's what communism and totalitarianism is all about. You got to get the kids during their formative years. and basically teach them what to think, how to think. And but the data collection on kids in homeschooling, I think that's ridiculous. But once again, that's another argument for another time. I understand them wanting to know how the kids are doing, but pre-approved reading lists is not something that most homeschoolers take lightly, coming from government. So I say, the kids, basically should, as far as the education system goes, the parents need to make the decisions, not the government. I mean, that's the concrete foundation of this entire conversation on SB 727. And
absolutely.
And what happened was SB 727 basically gave the illusion that parents were making it, the decisions for the kids. And it brought in corporatism, and it brought in a lot more government into education. And that's the problem with it. And so parents are not the masters, basically of that domain anymore. Well, if they don't take the vouchers, you're fine, but if you take the vouchers, watch out. It's kind of the way 727 played out. If you need,
well, a lot of Republicans got duped by that.
I think you might be right on that too.
In the end, they got crumbs, and the government schools got the better part of $1 billion more funding.
Yep. And
which is never enough.
Yep. No. It'll never. In fact, Ron, if we paid $1 million per child per year in the state of Missouri, it still wouldn't be enough. They never have.
I
enough
actually
money.
think the money has been counterproductive.
It has,
because they have to try to find new things, new programs, new, stupid things to do with the money.
Yeah, but back in the 70s, when they were spending about $2,000 per kid per year, we had much, much higher test scores, standardized test scores in the state of Missouri for our kids. And now Missouri is really not doing well. I don't want to bring up statistics on this because, I was kind of hoping we would talk a little bit more, beyond the SB3 thing and, hit a little bit more on a few other things that may or may not be happening up in Jeff City. But that was something that was near and dear to many people's hearts in the state of Missouri. The education bill in 2024. This was not done in 2025, folks. This was in 2024. And what I really loved about it, Ron, in retrospect, is that so many grassroots came together. 27 official grassroots organizations came together to fight SB 727. What's sad is apparently we didn't have an impact.
Well, the problem is some of the people that we thought were our champions let us down.
Yeah.
And what happened is that they sold us out, basically. Deals were made early in the legislative process. Same thing happened with PDMP.
Yeah.
And, the deal was cut very early on. But, by the people that had been standing in the gap, keeping PDMP from passing, they agreed that they would stand down if they got what they wanted. And they ended up not getting what they wanted anyway.
Yep.
So it's at some point, you just have to stand on principle.
Yeah.
And if it's bad, you fight it. And if it's good, you fight for it. And you don't compromise, accepting bad so you hopefully get good.
Sure.
Because we never end up getting the good.
Yep. For Crane's writes in Rumble, common law principles. And I think he's referring to John Locke, but I think we could apply it to this part of the conversation as well. What's wrong with parents being in control, basically of their child's education? Apparently government has a big problem with that. And a lot of corporations do too. And so they worked the legislators in Missouri. There was money going into Missouri as early as 2022 for what ultimately became SB 727. And there were millions of dollars of it. And so that avoids common law principles as well. I don't want to talk much more about that because then it goes to names and numbers. And I know some of them. I know some of the names and numbers and how much money they got to push that through. And it was most of that money went to leadership, the vast majority of it, but it went to other people too.
Well, that's the perfect segue to talk about the other topic that you wanted to touch on, and that is the congressional redistricting and IP reform.
Okay.
Which you normally wouldn't think are related issues, but they are in this case for a couple of reasons. Number one, the Trump administration is putting a lot of pressure on the state of Missouri and some other states to redistrict, even though we're in between two censuses. So normally they take a census every 10 years, and then you redistrict.
Yep.
So we're halfway between two censuses, and the Trump administration wants us to redistrict. I think, and I don't know if I'll make any of your members mad, but I think it's because Trump is screwing up so bad that he's losing his base. So what happened to ending the Ukraine war? What happened to fostering in peace in the Middle East? What happened to getting rid of billions and billions and billions of dollars to the Doge project?
Yep.
Okay. Those are abject failures. Elon Musk figured out pretty quickly that they weren't serious about doing anything about cutting all this waste. And, then comes the big, beautiful bill that by far spends way more money than a few $1 billion that Doge saved. And so so Elon Musk says, I'm out of here.
Yep.
And then comes the Epstein garbage. And boy, I tell you what, I think Trump protests too much. He's either worried about what it's going to say about him, or he's worried about protecting some of the swamp creatures out there. I don't know what it is, but I don't know why he was so resistant to try to shine some light on the whole Epstein thing. But all of that, I think, has him worried. And of course, then there's the tariffs. Tariffs are a terrible, terrible idea. And all of that's got him worried about the midterms. So he needs some gerrymandering. And so he's putting pressure, and people from the White House are calling our state legislators, twisting their arms to try to get them to agree to a special session so they can draw a 7-1 congressional district map.
Yep.
So what happens when you take a state like Missouri with 8 congressional districts and you try to make it so that Republicans can win 7 of those 8?
Well, here's the problem with when you redistrict like that anyway. You water down the Republican districts, and then they become swing districts. And then you don't know how it's impossible to predict at that point. And that's assuming, of course, that we're using electronic voting machines again, and which we're supposed to be getting rid of. I need to talk to Denny up at the SOS office about that, because he campaigned on that, and he's not been very vocal about that lately.
So can you kind of say that maybe the Columbia area state Senate district was kind of like a watered down Republican district?
Absolutely.
You have a 7-1 map.
Absolutely. In fact, you have a card-carrying communist for mayor of Columbia. I don't know how that happened, but that's the truth.
But, until this last election, they were electing a Republican.
Yeah. Well,
Caleb Brown.
Yeah, Caleb Brown, Republican. I love it. I've seen his voting record. He can call himself a Republican all he wants, but he didn't vote that way very well.
Well, so isn't that what you're going to get?
Yes.
Caleb Rowden style congressman?
Yes.
If you end up with 7 watered down districts?
Yes. You absolutely will. I'm positive of it. And if not right away, in the near future anyway. Yes, you will.
Yep.
So
we can't find 2 good conservative congressmen to send to Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
How are we going to find 7?
Yeah. And,
But you know what bothers me most?
What's that?
It's just not honest.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's problematic as well. But you're right. I mean, on the face of it, it's kind of a disingenuous, knee-jerk reaction to handling a midterm election in advance. And
yeah, rather than doing good things, rather than affecting good policy that's going to win people,
mm-hmm.
They've got to play political games.
Yep. And I'll tell you what, Ron, if you don't mind, and by the way, I want everyone to know that Ron's been quite a trooper tonight, because my audio interface is messing up and he's getting feedback pretty bad, and he's been working through it. But Ron, if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and unmute on the other side and see if anyone who is in Signal right now has any direct questions for you based on anything that we've talked about tonight. Is that okay?
You bet. I don't think that's going to affect. I'm getting feedback one way or the other.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, I have turned up the audio now for Signal, so anyone in Signal that wants to ask Ron any questions, please do so. We had Caleb unmute for a second, then he remuted.
I was going to throw in there that we did actually, I was able to hear him full audio the entire time. I know earlier you said that you're going to turn that down, but it was still full audio over here.
Okay.
I don't know if that I don't know if that had an effect on his still getting the echo, is what I'm saying.
No. This was basically so Ron couldn't hear you guys in case you unmuted. I had you guys turned off on the audio interface. That's what I meant.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
Okay.
There's something I was going to say too. I don't remember what it was, so I'll wait.
Okay. Well, that's okay, because I figured, basically, you're one of our biggest SAPA guys there, Caleb, in the initiative. So if you had any questions about how things are going down in the court, now's the perfect time to ask Ron.
I mean, there's really not much else I can ask. I mean, he's been pretty straightforward with it, and only thing I can say is, I really wish that the DOJ would take a different angle on the immigration cities to avoid this problem, and that's that. I don't know, the fact that there was an invasion declared for specific groups. You could go that angle rather than, trying to subvert anti-commandeering.
Yeah.
There's also the fact that if they just disregarded that portion of it, if they want to ruin themselves in these, blue states, then that's their problem. But you could instead go after the fact that they're allowing non-citizens to vote. That is, that's in the Constitution, at least in one of the amendments, that only citizens are able to vote in the federal elections. That probably it could be something they could go at, but not attacking anti-commandeering.
Well, the anti-commandeering doctrine is so powerful simply because it's not doing anything. It's hard to make somebody do something. It's hard to make a state do something. And the implications are so great that I'm not sure that it's kind of like gun rights itself. So we accept the fact that bad guys are going to get guns if you have a law or a system that allows good guys to have guns.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the way it is. We accept the fact that if you let people drive on the highway, there's going to be some bad drivers.
Yep.
And so I think that we might just have to live with the fact that we're going to have some states like California that are going to turn a blind eye to illegal immigration. And I don't know, deal with it another way. I'm not sure, but now ICE has a bigger budget than all the other alphabet soup agencies together. ICE is a small army. It's not so small army. And they're going to need the local help less and less all the time, I think. Which, by the way, is a lesson to what might happen if they ever decide that they're going to come after our scary black rifles.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine they give the ATF a budget the size of ICE?
Oh, dear God.
Oh, that was
Yeah,
bad
that would
enough.
be
I
good.
mean, you heard Pam Bondi.
But your point is very well taken, Ron. I mean, it's like if you're serving, alcohol in a store, you're going to have alcoholics. I mean, there are people that will take things to excess. There's mental issues out there. But the whole idea of the Old West was everyone had a gun. So basically, and everyone knew everyone had a gun. So people were less likely to abuse that. Basically knowing that if they brandish their firearm in, an unconventional way to begin with, and then doing something that was wholly illegal or stupid or some drunkard, that he was probably going to get shot by, an innocent person that was just there and happened to be carrying a gun as well. So good people kill bad people with guns all the time. I mean, these stories are on social media. And the thing is constitutional carry is the solution to that. If all the states had constitutional carry, everyone had a choice. No one would know who's carrying anymore. And they wouldn't have to have government permission to do so. So it's not like they need to look up a database somewhere. So the anonymity with carrying a firearm, is just as powerful as the anonymity. I can't speak, I'm legally stupid, of actually having, basically anonymous transactions with cash. It's as important to society. Go ahead.
Basically what you're saying, Patrick, is that liberty works.
Correct. It does. But the liberty has to be equally distributed across everybody. That's the only way it does work. You can't segregate people. Basically, that's the way liberty was intended to work anyway. So, and that's what government does. Basically, Ron, did you know that there was a vote in the Senate yesterday to actually disarm veterans, to take away veterans' firearms? And it failed. It was 44 to 51. And I can't believe that they even had a bill like that. It actually was an amendment to an existing bill. But I can't believe they actually had a vote on this.
Yeah, it got a lot of yes votes, didn't it?
44.
Yeah.
44, Ron. I mean, this is insane. So I've commented on this on Twitter. Either the Democrats that voted, to take away their firearms, either they don't know the Constitution or they're deliberately subverting the Constitution. So,
back to Caleb's point about finding other ways to deal with immigration, illegal immigration.
Yep.
I think we can learn some lessons from what at least some of us think needs to happen with the problem with drugs.
Yep.
We don't have a supply problem with drugs. We have a demand problem. And as long as there's a demand for illicit drugs, there are going to be enterprising people who attempt to meet that demand. So if you want to fix the drug problem, the most important thing you can do is change people's hearts.
Yep.
And the most important thing you can do is give young people, not give, but make sure young people can get jobs. So I would suggest that the minimum wage, the high minimum wage, causes some of the drug problem.
Yep.
And it causes some of the crime problem. I think that some of the people that are causing crime and on drugs, if they had meaningful jobs, they would be less likely to be using drugs and involved in criminal activity.
Yeah.
So how does that apply to immigration? So, well, let me back up a little bit. So instead of trying to deal with the demand problem rather than the supply problem with drugs, they do things that infringe on the rights of all kinds of people. So you end up you're driving down the road minding your business and you end up caught up in a drug interdiction checkpoint. You have all kinds of Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights that are being subjugated to the war on drugs. Okay. Same thing applies with the war on immigration. What are the two most important things you can do, in my opinion, to deal with immigration? Number one, you do, to Trump's credit, you do need to close the border. You need to make sure that people that are coming here legally. But the other thing you do is take away some of the government-induced incentive for them to be here. You don't let people come to America and go on welfare.
Mm-hmm.
You stop subsidizing the trafficking of illegal immigrants and incentivizing it. So those are two kind of low-hanging fruit things you can do, and you can do it without undermining some core principles like the anti-commandeering doctrine.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Ron, Caleb has a quick question for you. Caleb, come on in, buddy.
Yeah, I didn't know if he could still hear me or not, but I'm just thinking. Okay, I kind of lost what I was gonna say there. Oh, it sucks. Wow, I completely lost what I was gonna say. That's lovely. It's been a long day.
That's okay. Anti-commandeering doctrine.
You made the point earlier that we have, there's things they can do without gutting the anti-commandeering doctrine.
There's a million other things they could do, and the thing is, if their election integrity and them directly using migrants and just signing them up and refusing ID for an election is a problem in California, and they will do it to manipulate anything. That on top of ballot box stuffing. But the question is, where I would like to see the I don't have a copy of the Constitution in front of me, and I can't. And like I said, long day. I can't remember which amendment, but the fact is, 18 and over citizens are the ones that have the right to vote, at least for federal side. And you would think that they would have the ability to at least enforce that, meaning that might actually affect their state government as well.
Well, a lot of states just take the federal law on that. So when you're 18, most states let you vote. I think all of them do.
But is there anything that the feds can do, the FEC and all that, to just directly act on their elections, to look at it and subpoena the information to figure out, okay, how much fraud is actually going on here?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, and you could say pursuant to ensuring 18, citizens of the United States are voting, 18-year-old citizens of the United States are voting, they could expect, the ability to subpoena all of their voting records, or at least demand that they have an ID for voting, at least for the federal side, for federal elections.
Well, I know what they could do. They could create a real ID card.
I refuse that, Ron. I have to get a passport to fly now.
But you get my point, though.
Well, I'm being facetious. My point is, you have to be careful what you ask for sometimes.
Sure.
Oh, believe me, I know, and I'm thinking around that as well. Like, how many can you? Let's say you can count the amount of citizens that are registered to vote, and then compare that to the amount of votes that actually came in. How many of those were actually citizens? You can check the voter rolls. That can be subpoenaed, but without dealing with a real ID, or some federal ID form. I don't know. My mind goes there because the fact that it's either that or they're just going to completely screw up their own state, and I guess it'll always be what they're going to be.
The sad thing is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, they'll just always be what they're going to be. They'll destroy themselves, and they're going to keep, it doesn't matter what the feds do, they're going to keep taxing their citizens into oblivion so they can support importing migrants. I mean, at this point, it's human trafficking.
Well, the sad thing is that we're still dealing with symptoms, not the problem. So if the federal government was constrained to its constitutionally enumerated powers and nothing else, it wouldn't matter very much who the president was, or who was in Congress, or who was in the U.S. Senate.
I hear you.
This is true. I'm just thinking of right now what we're dealing with, because I understand the constitutional principles. The president is just supposed to be someone that effectively signs the laws if he believes they're constitutional and not just for political gain, or decides just to not enforce something he feels unconstitutional, ordering the subordinate departments to say no, or to engage in war if Congress declares it. That's pretty much all the office of the president is supposed to be doing. Maybe appointing some people to the Postmaster General of the United States, that kind of thing. But the fact is, I look at where we're at now, and where it's kind of a mental conundrum, because I look and say, okay, here's what the principles are. This is where we're supposed to be. But then you come to reality right now. That's not where we're at. What can we do to mitigate the problems and at least to stall to try to fix things? Because if you get too far along, then everything you're trying to do to get back to principle is just, it ends up breaking down and falling apart. So what can you do to mitigate problems right now?
Well,
to have at least a net gain.
Well, Caleb, you were a major part of developing the roadmap to do just what you're talking about. And that was with the 10th Amendment bill that you helped to pass, the bill we called the Second Amendment Preservation Act. Because it was a 10th Amendment bill. It was all about states' rights. It was all about trying to constrain the federal government to its enumerated powers. So the dream has always been for the principles underlying the Second Amendment Preservation Act to be applied to a whole plethora of ways that the federal government is destroying the states.
Yeah, I have to throw in there too, and just from a sociology, psychology angle. And, of the people that sit here and listen to our live streams, or will sit and watch it later, if they miss it, these are people that know, at least for the most part, what's going on. And, or at least try to get in there and do something and have a level of principle. But sadly, and I've said this for a long time, and I actually just saw a chart and some data that said the same thing. At least 50% of the population is clinically retarded. I'm not kidding. At least 50% of the population is clinically retarded. And then of the other 50% that isn't, you have about at least 90% of those, 90% of those that are brainwashed, completely brainwashed. They have no clue what's going on in the world. They live their day-to-day, non-playable character lifestyle. And then there's a portion of these people that will sit there and watch Fox or CNN all day and absolutely do nothing outside of that. And these are the people that end up, whether they realize it or not, destroying everything. And it's a conundrum of how do you get to these people and at least try to educate them?
Well,
and how fast can you do that before everything,
falls apart? Yeah,
it gets destroyed?
Well, the public schools were supposed to handle this. This was the purpose of the public schools. They've lost their way. They've lost their direction. In fact, they've been usurped.
The purpose of the public schools was to, at least a modern public school system as it came in from the Turkish model, was designed to do all of this.
Yes, we're in the Prussian model. We're not in the Turkish model. So,
whatever you want to call it, yeah.
Yep. So basically, this is an indoctrination system that we have with the public education system. And I think it probably originated probably earlier than this, but setting up the Department of Education in 1978 under Jimmy Carter actually kicked it into high gear to go to the Prussian model. But as far as, basically parents are going to have to educate their kids, but the parents don't even know. That's the problem. They've gone through the same public school system that their kids are going through. So actually, it hurts to put your kids in public school, and that's actually what's causing the retardation of America, as you say. They're brainwashed, in effect, in my opinion. And
well, they have brainwashing, but because of just how the public school system works, it doesn't work on learning.
No,
it works on obedience.
It's obedience and memorization.
Obedience and memorization is not intelligence.
No, it's not.
Obedience and memorization is a worker bee mentality.
Correct.
Where they literally
The Prussian model.
In the developmental stages, you are suppressing IQ.
Yes, you are. A liquid IQ in kids, that is correct. And so that is correct. I mean, this is why SB 727 was so, well manned by the grassroots of Missouri to make sure that it was done right. And the problem was money came in and changed minds. So we have a problem with retardation, as you had said, and if that's offensive to people, we'll choose another word. Just a lot of stupid people out there that don't even know.
It's the medical term.
Okay.
An IQ under, mild retardation is considered, oh God, what is the threshold now? I have a chart somewhere. I can't remember exactly.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter for the point. So if they're not retarded, they are greedy. And so they'll take money into a campaign coffer or into a PAC in order to vote against their constituents. And so this is a problem with man's heart now, because he's not principled. People that generally go into politics, not all of them, some of them are extremely principled people. I know some of them. But most of them are not. They will take bribes. And it's really sad. Bribes is maybe a horrible way to put it. They'll take PAC money, they'll take campaign money, they'll take favors, they'll take dinners, and then they'll vote the way that whoever paid for that dinner or put in that PAC donation asked them to vote. And so that's not even retardation at that point. That's just simple corruption, just pure and simple corruption. When we elect people, we hope that they're going to. First of all, they're going to take the oath of office, but we hope that they're principled people that know that lying is wrong, stealing is wrong. But what an elected official should know most is that their first job is to protect the rights of their constituents. That is their first job, no matter what. And many of them have simply lost their way in that regard. They literally don't even consider their constituents until it's time to get reelected. They don't talk to them. And by the way, I can name names up in Jefferson City. There's a lot of people up there that absolutely will not return phone calls to their constituents or return emails to their constituents. And so maybe we need to start calling these people out publicly, because their constituents is literally who matters, basically to them as an elected official. That's who should matter to them, not leadership. Not the guy in the $2,000 suit coming in with his checkbook into his legislative office. These people shouldn't matter to this person. It should be their constituents, and for a lot of them, their constituents are a mild afterthought. They start worrying about if their constituents start finding out about the stuff they're doing. That's their fear of their constituents, is finding out what kind of behavior they enact in when they're up there, working in Jeff City. And
see, that's going back to these multiple subject bills and the change purpose bills. They get to hide the mischief in amongst all the, what might otherwise look like good stuff.
Absolutely. And Ron, you and I work up in Jeff City, as the best we can and do the best work that we can. We come up with the best ideas we can. We support the best bills. And so what many people may not know is here I'm being kind of critical of the government here in the state of Missouri, the state I live in, but this is happening in every state. It's not just in Missouri. It happens everywhere. The only thing is they just don't have enough grassroots to be able to pick up on this in their states. Now, people know that California is a very, very, very corrupt state. New York, Illinois is very corrupt. New Jersey is corrupt. But a lot of people don't think of Missouri as being corrupt or Texas as being corrupt, but they are too. We are too. So that's why we need more grassroots with, boots on the ground in the Capitol, watching these guys, talking to these guys, having conversations with these guys, because they're less likely to start making bad decisions when they know lots of eyeballs and ears are on them. So that's my 2 cents on that.
I agree.
Yep. So, but I'll tell you what, before we wrap it up, and we will be wrapping it up, I just want to remind everyone that we're going to start doing some public meetings around the state of Missouri talking about silver and gold, and also the businesses that offer services, products in relation to silver and gold transactions, transacting in silver and gold. So we weren't going to make it a real big topic tonight, but we don't have a date yet, but it looks like our first one may be in Owensville, Missouri, and there's been a request to have another one also close to Owensville as well. So basically, we're going to start hatching these details. We're going to start figuring it all out. I'll get materials from bullion banks to hand out. So we got gold and silver done, gang, but that was just phase 1. Phase 2 is education, and the education is extremely important when it comes to mom and pop businesses. Very, very important. If we want them transacting in gold and silver, we have to show them how to do it. We have to let them know all the means that are available to them to actually accomplish this in their stores. And so that's an endeavor that we knew was going to be coming when silver and gold was done, and we're working on that right now. And I already explained the problem. I'm getting a lot of communication from folks wondering what's going on with the idea of getting rid of property taxes. Guys, we just don't have the numbers that we need right now to even start hammering out details on how to do this. We need numbers, and no one's got a full big number for the entire state for us. So it looks like we may have to divide up the work between a lot of folks in the initiative to start calling school districts to find out how much money they're taking in property taxes through their initial bond for schools, as well as any other bonds they have voted in. So this is a precarious, time-consuming task, and a lot of this can be found on their websites, but it's going to have to be done. So I really hope that we could find a central source. We've not been able to find it. At least they don't claim to have the number because everything's grouped together. So, and Ron, I just checked on all of our socials. We hang on. Let's see if we have any questions for you in Rumble here, real quick. Done by design. Okay. How long do the people operate in the de facto bullcrap? People's grand juries and return true de jure form of government. And I don't know that Ron can answer that question for you, but it's up to the people. I mean, when the people get tired of the de facto bullcrap, as you put it, the people, are going to have to literally start paying attention and start getting active with their local and state government. That's how you do it.
And they're not going to get tired until we tell them that it's happening.
Yeah. And that's one thing I've noticed as being grassroots, Ron, is very precious few people have any idea what's going on in the state in Missouri. They don't follow state news. They have no idea what's going on.
They think the federal stuff and the world stuff is more important.
Yeah.
So one thing that we didn't quite touch on, if we can spend a minute on.
Sure.
So there's this pressure from the Trump administration to have a special session and redistrict. So we have a 7-1 map. So we have 7 Republicans and 1 Democrat, 1 DC. But they want to run concurrently with that an effort to, quote, reform IP. And of course, I think that ultimately the initiative and the other grassroots need to learn. They need to learn how to use the petition process to make an end run around these, the swamp politicians that we have even in Jefferson City. And so my opinion is we need to keep the initiative petition process available and healthy. The initiative petition process is like the political Second Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't want them to disarm us. But at the same time, we've got to figure out how to keep the deep pocket left moneyed interest from basically buying our Constitution.
Yeah.
And so what we've talked about this before. The solution, I think, is not IP reform, but it's ratification reform. We need to make it harder to ratify amendments to the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
And the most equitable way to do that is using concurrent majority ratification. So you have to have a broad geographic consensus.
Mm-hmm.
What happens, though, Patrick, if you have CMR, and just as a reminder, CMR would require that you have two different majority votes to amend the Missouri Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have to have a majority vote statewide like we do right now, but you'd also have to have a majority of a second metric. And that second metric could be a majority of the House districts, the state House districts, also agree on the amendment, or a majority of the congressional districts
Mm-hmm.
agree on the amendment before it could pass. So what happens if you have a 7-1 map and you're using congressional districts as the second metric?
Well, then what happens is basically 7-1 map. Once again, if it was redistricted as 7-1, you have uncertainty because you have watered down Republican districts.
Yep. So the protection that you would otherwise realize is greatly diminished if you have CMR using congressional districts as the second metric, and you gerrymander weakness into those 7 Republican districts.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think I finally got through to at least some of the members of leadership in the last year or two about the problem with that. So their solution is to raise the bar some other way too. I've just kind of got wind of this today. So not just the CMR that we've been talking about, but maybe CMR with a higher percentage than just 50%. Now, the problem with that is it's going to be harder to pass, and it's going to be harder to undo things like the abortion amendment, Amendment 3.
Mm-hmm.
Except for this. Their solution to that is to have a double standard. So what they want to do is they want to raise the bar on ratifying amendments that are proposed by petition. But if the legislature proposes an amendment, it would still be the current 50% plus 1 standard.
Yep.
So what's wrong with that?
Well, once again, you're talking about in the legislature, that would be a double standard. So the people have to, there's more people that have to vote for it to change the Constitution versus the General Assembly. And I've already talked about some of the issues we have in the General Assembly right now with their hearts for taking money from lobbyists, not caring about their constituents. And if we give them the double standard where they can get it done with the 50% plus 1, but the people must get it done with a majority of congressional districts, that kind of, I don't like that.
It's a power shift to government.
It is.
It's a power shift to the courts.
Yes.
And, the fact of the matter is I'm not real impressed with the Republican legislature. What's going to happen when the Democrats take over the legislature?
Yeah.
We want them to have an easier path to amend the Constitution.
Yeah, no, not really.
So it's the typical short-sightedness you see from Republicans.
Yep.
And so we really, really, really need a strong grassroots statement right now telling all of our elected officials in Jefferson City, no double standard.
Yep. Okay, that's definitely something I think that I can let the initiative know about. Is there any plans right now that you know of besides the veto sessions in September, Ron, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's about the roughly middle of September.
Okay.
And they're already planning on it, and there's a lot of push to have congressional redistricting and IP reform both being dealt with. And it won't be during the veto override session; it'll be concurrent with it.
Yep, understood.
So they can only actually consider veto overrides during the veto override session, but they can have two sessions running at the same time.
Okay. All right, fair enough. Well, thank you for that. And that's something that we can all work on in the initiative and let our friends and neighbors know about as well. It's time to contact the legislators and let them know that we're not interested in the double standard for IP reform. And so, in fact, that's not even the right way to put it. It's concurrent majority is what we're looking for, but we definitely don't want there to be a double standard between the Missouri legislature and how few votes they get to change the Constitution versus, basically what the people get. Now, what the legislator gets also goes to the vote of the people, correct?
Yeah, so if the legislature proposes an amendment, it's still got to be voted on by the people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just saying I don't want a simple majority to ratify even amendments that they propose.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because I don't trust them.
Yeah, no, it's hard to. Go ahead.
And I certainly won't trust them when the Democrats take over.
Yeah. Yep. So God help us all if that happens. But you know what? It wouldn't surprise me if it did. The Republicans have really not done a very good job in the state. This is the most purple red state, I think, in the entire United States of America. Texas is a close second, maybe. It's really sad. Basically for people that are into, basically, let's just talk about the Constitution for a second here, conservative principles, and finding someone who is a Republican up in Jeff City that follows conservative principles is difficult. There's not that many of them up there, gang. There really isn't. We have a lot of Republicans up there. We have the majority. But those that are following conservative principles, following the conservative platforms, and Ron, do you remember what happened at the convention last year in Springfield? It's just these guys are a different kind of animal.
Well, we've done some really good things like SAPA,
sure,
silver and gold, not because they're that with it. I think those things happen because
pressure
of the big push, the big momentum, the big snowball rolling down the hill, and they just don't want to get squished by it.
Yep. So, and it's really strange that we had to put in, that Nazi gold wouldn't be circulated as money in the state of Missouri, in our bill, but we call that the Meredith Amendment, the Peter Meredith Amendment, by the way. It's the only thing I think he's ever gotten done before, and he's termed out already. So I need to call him up and let him know that made it through and had the Nazi gold, Nazi silver amendment. And we got Democrat votes on that. There were Democrats that actually admitted they voted for it because we did have the clause in there to eliminate Nazi gold and Nazi silver coins from being money in the state of Missouri, which we were not afraid of. But the Democrats apparently were deathly afraid that was going to happen. So it's wild.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Those coins are in private collections and in museums, and they're worth well more than their weight of silver and gold. They're very rare.
I think those are crocodile tears.
Yep, I'm sure they were, but it seemed to satisfy a lot of the Democrats, though, for whatever reason. I don't know. But, Ron, I want to...
As you've learned, the legislative process sometimes is just removing one excuse after another.
Yep. Peeling that onion. It's bad. It's bad, and it shouldn't be that bad, but you're absolutely right. Removing excuses is a lot of what you do as a grassroots person when you're supporting a bill. And so that intel is very, very powerful too, basically going up there and chatting with them about it. And that is if they're honest with you, because we found a lot of them don't want to really be honest with us. They'll tell us one thing, but they'll tell another legislator something completely different. So you never really know where they're at. And so that's another difficult thing we deal with as grassroots folks as well. But, we go on, basically if the grassroots were not in the state of Missouri, if Ron Calzone was not marching down the halls of Jefferson City, the capital, for the last 30 years, I suspect that Missouri wouldn't be as nice a place to live, gang. So thank you, Ron, for everything you've been doing for decades in this state.
Well, I think some of it feels like you're just tilting at windmills, but.
Yeah, well, we all take on fights we can't win sometimes. I think we all do that, especially when you're grassroots. I mean, you do. You end up in 727. That was the curveball I didn't see coming. I figured we had that one.
Well, some of our friends let us down.
Yeah.
Legislative friends.
Yep, you're absolutely right. And that ended up being a tilting at windmill situation that I literally did not see coming. I literally thought that there was no way they were going to let that through with the sheer amount of resistance that was coming into Jeff City on that. So, alrighty. Well, thank you very much for being with us tonight, Ron. Holy mackerel. And what a trooper, dealing with the feedback and everything. So thank you once again. If anyone in the Signal chat has any more questions, there's none in... no questions, comments, but no questions here in the chats. Anyone in Signal, last chance to ask Ron a question? Looks like, yep, we don't have any questions for you, Ron, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up this transmission. Thank you again for explaining to us what's going on with SAPA.
I think I've done an adequate job boring everybody for the last hour or so, but.
I don't think so. People were pretty engaged. There's a lot of comments here, just not a lot of questions. So,
I'm not bored over here. It's just I'm multitasking, but I'm a nerd too. So.
Yep. So, and Wilderness Gal says, I honestly believe the Republican Party has been infiltrated. They are mostly not Republican conservative. Time to clean it up. Boot them out and replace them with those who will work for their constituents. So it's comments like that we've been getting throughout the show and everything, but not a lot of questions. Yeah. But that raises an important issue, Ron, is people literally helping good people who are running for office. Now, Ron does a little bit of that. I do a little bit of that. I hope everyone else does too. If you know of a good person who's running for office, support them. Please knock on doors for them, put up signs for them, donate if you can to them. We have to get more good people. Go ahead.
And Patrick, that in fact, somebody just told me that the 4th, I think it is the 25th anniversary of Missouri First Incorporated.
Ah.
So we actually incorporated Missouri First 25 years ago.
Wow.
And of course, I was active long before that, but in all that time, Missouri First has never asked for a penny from anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So, we operate with, Missouri First doesn't even have a checkbook.
Yep.
The Article 3 Institute is different. So, the lawsuit that we just filed this week is going to cost at least $50,000. So the Article 3 Institute does need to raise money if we're going to continue to challenge these unconstitutional bills.
Gotcha.
So we do need to get the word out. Article 3, the numeral 3, institute.org.
Okay, gotcha. So article in the number 3 institute.org, and you can help out basically Ron's organization that's actually trying to reverse some of the damage done by SB3 right here in the state of Missouri through the court system. But one more thing, Ron is terrible at self-promotion, just like I am. If you are not on Ron Calzone's email list at mofirst.org, you are missing out. I send out way more emails than Ron does, by the way. But Ron's are super jam-packed with incredibly good information on constitutional bills in the state of Missouri. So please hook up with Ron on his email list. Once again, at mofirst.org. M-O is in Missouri, first, F-I-R-S-T.org. And you can get right on his email list right there. And you just don't get that many from Ron, but they're incredibly powerful and packed with good information when you do get them. And equally on the Missouri Freedom Initiative website, mofree.org, sign up to our mail list if you've not done that. That's our primary communication because of censorship, unfortunately, on the live platforms that we're on. So email list to us is very, very important as well. But don't forget, if you have a little extra money, if you believe in the work that Ron Calzone is doing and protecting Missouri citizens and now going through the court process to reverse some of the bad bills that have gone through, don't forget, basically you can donate to the Article 3 Foundation with Ron. And Ron, I'll make sure to put that, the Institute. And I'll go ahead and link that up here when the videos are done in the description section so people can go and find that much more easily. So if you're watching this video weeks after the fact, just look in the description section. It'll be right there. Thanks again for being with us, Ron.
Thank you, Patrick.
You bet. You guys, thank you for spending 2 hours with us tonight. I wasn't anticipating 2 hours, but we did have a lot of information to go through. And 2 hours of your time is precious. So thank you for that. I do appreciate it, especially those of you who are working with us to make Missouri a better place to live, to bring liberty to the state of Missouri. And all I can say is thank you so much. May God bless each and every one of you, and may God bless us all with wisdom and courage. Take care, gang.